Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Friday to you. And it is the first Friday of April, and that means it is Family First Friday. And did I blur out to all of you? Weird. Remember that all? Oh, am I frozen? Huh. Man, we haven't had these kind of problems in a while. Uh, uh, this is weird. Am I doing weird things on your screen or is it just mine? Anyway, I'm going to operate as though it's just on my end unless you tell me otherwise. Except, wow. Uh, somebody, I'm trying to concentrate here. Frozen, huh? Interesting. Is it unfrozen now? Okay. I don't know what's going on, but sorry. So, yes, it's the first Friday of the month, which means it's Family First Fridays. We talk about family. I see a couple theological questions in here, and we are not going to talk about those today, at least not in general. Um, Blurred then frozen. Weird. Okay. So, Caleb, I appreciate your statement there. You are a father of two children, aged 3 and 1. You're all ears. Help me be the father that God wants you to be. Uh, Whatever you're doing, don't do that. Yeah. We've covered a lot of ground on these Family First Fridays about what our role is as parents from the scripture, short term and long term, that kind of thing. We've talked about romance and marriage while being parents. We talked about that in February, I think. We talked about discipline and some of those things. So, my one of the things I like to do, especially in a small group setting, which this kind of is, even though I can't see you all, is give space for interaction, questions, anything that we've provoked along the way. So I would love to hear if you have specific questions. It doesn't have to be tied to the family things we've already talked about. So if there's a way, like for Caleb, if I can help you, put your questions there in the chat, and I will be happy to address them. I know some of you are at my stage of the game or later, right? Your kids are grown. And so for those of you kind of in that category, what is something that you look back on and you wish this had been clearer to you when you were younger in this journey? Do you know what I mean by that? Um, when you get to the other end of raising a family, there are some things that you think, I probably heard this, somebody probably told me this, I probably even knew this, but if I had really understood and meditated on and acted upon this concept, things would have been even better. So I don't know if we have anybody who has older kids here. I'd be interested to know if you have any input on that. And for the rest of you, if you have just any questions, Sana wants to know how many mugs I own. Well, a lot. So this is the one I've been drinking from most recently when I took my wife to Estes Park a few weeks ago. That I purchased this there. I liked it. It doesn't really have anything to do with the Rocky Mountains and Estes Park, but it's got music notes and it's big. I like some big mugs. I have a huge amount of mugs indeed. You realize we serve coffee for 35 or so people on Sunday mornings in my home. And so we have to have lots of mugs. So there's your answer. Caleb says, yes, your teaching so far has been very influential on my marriage with my wife and children. Thank you. I've listened to your study on being a man from a few years ago quite a few times. Yeah, for all the guys, I would strongly recommend that. Are you talking about the one where I was standing in front of the whiteboard and didn't have great audio or video at the time? I think I called it the 7 core responsibilities of manhood. Um, really important stuff for us as men to think through. So I'm glad you're reading that. All right. Well, I don't want to limit this to the question I put to you. Do you have questions, any of you, or comments? Just your own insights and observations. What has been helpful for you in thinking through marriage, family, parenting, that kind of thing? Megan says, I'm here trying to date with wisdom as I seek to be married again. Caleb says, no, the one you first started with, that other guy. So I did some manhood stuff with, that would have either been, did we do some, was it Josh? Did we do some stuff on marriage? And I see here you say sex and marriage. Well, I can't remember. those are all in the rear view mirror, and they're a long way. So Sana says, one thing I wish I had known, implemented sooner, is that teaching doctrine is not near as important as teaching the love of Jesus. Tell me more about that. Because my first thought, and this is one of the difficulties of you trying to be concise in writing as opposed to us having a dialogue. What do you mean by teaching the love of Jesus? And by the way, if I remember correctly, your children are still pretty young, right? So you have the opportunity to make any changes as you need to. Maybe I'm misremembering that. Megan says, I'm here just trying to date with wisdom as I seek to be married again. All right. Well, if you have questions, Megan, I'm happy to interact with that as well. Caleb says the Kingly series from 2019. Oh, was that with Chris? I don't know. I did two stints of podcasts and live stream. One with a guy named Chris Fales hosting, which he pops on here now and then. So Chris, if you're here, say hello. Another with Josh Copen, and I can't remember what was what. Anyway, I'm glad you found those helpful. Okay, so Sana says our kids are 21, 20. Whoa, that's 3 close together then, 13, 11. So you still have some time with some. One of the things I was thinking about coming into this morning is one thing that we focused on when our kids were young, which ties into, I think, teaching the love of Jesus, or maybe showing the love of Jesus, is the kind of aroma or atmosphere, for lack of a better word, that our home had. And we certainly were intentional about making it an aroma, that's not the right word, I guess atmosphere, of love and joy. We tried to not let the waters we swim in around here be full of tension and worry. When things are serious and need to be seriously addressed or dealt with, and of course we did. That could be, times of sorrow, whether it be death or some other tragedy, some other very difficult thing. We dealt with those, and we took them seriously and allowed for time to discuss if we needed to cry and be sober and somber when we needed to. We didn't just put on the happy face and act like everything was great. No, we when appropriate, we dealt with those things. But life isn't usually, for most of us, a constant, heavy, somber situation. And so my wife and I were just very intentional about making sure, and we still are, that we are joyful in the Lord, and we create an atmosphere of joy and celebration and hopeful expectancy, that kind of thing. And part of that is I think, modeling the love of Jesus, and a joyful love. Now, there's other kinds of love. Tough love may not be so joyful as well. But that's what came to mind as you said that, because that's been on my mind lately. It's easy. So your kids are going to reflect what you model for them in so many ways. And I see what you said there, Sana, lifestyle teaching. Yeah. They're going to model what they see. And if you live in worry and misery, and there's yelling and discontentment constantly, that's what your kids are going to see. And that's how they're going to view life. They're going to camp on the things that make them miserable and assume the worst of everything. But you can have the opposite effect as well, and be hopeful and look at the positive things and so on. It really does make a difference, and everybody enjoys life more if you set that stage. So that's something that was already on my mind, and your statement triggered that. Eddie says, Oikos household life in the early church and how that relates to home fellowship meetings as you've been leading a home fellowship. Can you share about parallels between New Testament church life and home life? Sure. If I'm understanding your question correctly, so we look at our church, our home fellowship, as in many ways an extension of our family, which is, how the New Testament describes the church. It's one of the metaphors: brothers and sisters, fathers and children. Paul's admonition to Timothy, treat the older men like fathers, younger men like brothers, younger women like sisters in all purity, and older women like mothers. So it's one of the images, right, to discuss our relationship, and that carries over into just life. I've made the point in the past, we don't have a service, right? We don't have a worship service. There's no such thing as a worship service in the New Testament. We don't have an official start time and end time. Now, even like other family gatherings, like a birthday party or something, we do sort of have all right, everybody come over at this time, so come over at 10, but it's not formal, it's not official. And so we don't have an opening and closing to our service time. It's just, this is the stuff we do when we gather on Sundays, and that spills over into the rest of the week. And we do treat each other like brothers and sisters, helping one another, mutual encouragement, admonitions, all that kind of thing. So I guess, man, they could go a lot of different directions. That if you want to come back with a specific question, I'm happy to address it. But what we have found is our fellowship folks treat each other like family, good and bad, with all the trials that can bring and the joys and things. So that's a general answer. And if you have specific questions, I'm happy to hear them. Caleb says, my 3-year-old son is in the stage of really acting out and trying to be independent. What's your advice on managing that? I don't want to be overbearing and disciplined when I shouldn't. Yeah, so great question. One thing that comes to mind is you have to make a distinction between disobedience and energetic kids just being energetic kids. So I know you were here when we talked about discipline. You might want to watch those again. I've said this again and again. The 2 keys of parenting, especially when it comes to discipline, in my view, are relentless discipline and lavish affection. So every act of disobedience needs to be disciplined. And then there needs to be heaping praise and joy and celebration and happiness and all those things that we talk about. Affection, lots of hugs, good times. Again, getting back to that atmosphere, that aroma kind of thing of the household. Grace and joy is much of what you want and hope. Acting out is an interesting phrase, right? if you have given clear lines, clear marks of to do this is disobedience, then I think you need to discipline that. But be careful not to draw those lines too narrowly. At least from my perspective, I want my kids, I wanted them when they were young to explore, to try new things, to not be confined and constricted by too many rules and too many, no's and stuff. I wanted them to make a lot of mistakes and attempt a lot of things. So part of it is being clear in your mind. What are you going to require of them? And then you have to discipline accordingly. But you don't want to stifle the energy and exploration. You just want to teach them to control it in the right context and so on. So again, that's a vague question or vague answer to your question. Maybe it's tiring. Being a parent of a 2 or 3 year old, it's tiring. And just be careful that you're not disciplining out of your own frustration rather than objectively. Does that help? And do you want to drill in a little more specifically? Megan says, one struggle I've been learning and sometimes struggle with is going slowly, not getting swept up in the emotional high of a new relationship. Getting to know someone takes time, and so does love. Yeah, I agree. Any advice, wisdom on managing the pace of that, staying clear-headed and sober-minded? So, some of the counsel I have given to my own daughters and to many others over the years in that regard is, number one, be very careful of the physical affection. If you read my books on marriage, I have a premarital book and a married edition, and it's designed to help couples kind of work through what the Bible says about marriage and what I have learned about marriage, and give some of at least my perspective on what's wise and so on. One of the things that I encourage dating and even engaged couples to do is to not kiss until their wedding day. It's not because I'm prudish when it comes to sex. If you read the book, if we ever were to talk about marriage, if I were to do any kind of marriage counseling with you, most couples blush and are shocked that my wife and I are so willing to discuss these things so freely, because sex is a great part of marriage, and it's so important and it's fun, and I encourage it strongly. However, until you're married, kissing, first of all, it leads to other things, which is great in marriage. It's not great before marriage, but it also gets you very much affectionately and emotionally involved. And prior to being married, prior to your wedding day, you as a woman are observing and trying to make an objective decision. Here's what I told my daughters, and again, many other women. The number one question in your mind should be, is this a man I'm willing to submit to for the rest of my life? Because that's the hardest thing. And it's what Christ calls you to do, submit to your husband. And for a man, I tell him, is this the woman you are willing to commit to love for the rest of your life? And when you put a lot of affection, starting with kissing, in, suddenly your minds get distracted by what you're feeling and what you want, and the answer to those questions is less objective. And I advise just the opposite when you're married. You are committed. So wives, submit to your husbands. Husbands, love your wives and kiss a lot and let those clouds and those affections make it less objective, and work on the subjective, devotion to one another. But that's a big thing, is realizing if this relationship, I'm not a fan. I don't endorse dating just for the heck of it. I think dating should be the beginning of a relationship that is heading toward marriage. Now, of course, it can stop at any point, but I don't endorse just the freewheeling dating. Now, qualify that. I think it's possible to go too far on that end. Just go hang out and enjoy time together call it dating or whatever. I think sometimes couples rush too quickly into, oh, we have to be in a serious committed relationship heading toward marriage. Well, spend some time together first before you even get there. But once you're, definitely in a relationship, heading that way, I think you should be asking those questions, and physical affection gets in the way of that. So if you have any follow up on that, I'm happy to engage. Caleb says, any advice on not disciplining out of anger? I've always struggled with anger issues my whole life and have gotten a lot better, but sometimes it really comes through in my discipline. Being aware of it is good. That's the kind of the first place. That is something you should continue to be working through, when you're not responding to your child. When you spank because you're angry, you're being selfish. It's not for the good of the child. It's how dare he offend me in that way kind of thing. And that's something you need to keep working through. And maybe, though ideally discipline comes rapidly on the heels of the disobedience, it might be that you need to delay it for a few moments and collect yourself and ask yourself the question, has he really disobeyed and I need to discipline him, or am I just angry, upset or whatever? And it can be both. And then you just got to say, okay, I'm going to get a clear head here. I'm not going to spank him here out of anger. Caleb says, I would say disciplining a 3-year-old is heartbreaking. Spanking him when he's disobeying is very heartbreaking. Got to stay strong. Yeah. And again, why is that? Is that because you are focused on how you feel more than loving him and doing what's best for him? Is it, you get angry and then you feel bad for inflicting pain? Is that, why is that? And I get it. It's easy for me to speak so objectively here, and I don't mean to dismiss this as though it's this easy, but it does make me wonder if you get clear in your mind, you love him, and therefore you are not going to discipline him out of your own anger. You are going to discipline him because you do love him, and yeah, it's not pleasant to ever cause someone pain, but he will be better if he learns to obey. And so just think those things through regularly, even when you're not in the heat of it. I don't know. Those are just some thoughts. And again, I know it's easy for me to say this from afar objectively, and there's probably more worth jumping into, but loving him or her does seem to be the answer here. Do you have any favorite theologians? We'll talk about theology another time, Alexander. Dean says, in the beginning, you'll want to eat him up. Afterwards, you may wish. Sometimes. Yeah, that's funny. Caleb says, no, I would say it's hard for me because I just want my son to obey, and I guess I just feel for him that he tries to push back so much. Yeah, I mean, we all did that. We all do that. And it's exhausting, and sometimes it takes a long time. And I can just tell you from my own experience, there were times, I'm sure I shared this, when I'd come home, when I was going to the office, when I was a professional pastor, there were times when I come home and, my wife would just greet me at the door with the spanking spoon and and basically say, this is all I've done all day and I got to go upstairs and get away from the kids. And it's my turn to take over disciplining. And then when I was home, like on Saturdays and other days, yeah, it's exhausting. And sometimes you think that's all we do is discipline our kids. But I can tell you, at least from our experience, we were devoted and consistent for the most part. I mean, we were not flawless in it, but we were committed to being intentional and consistent, and we were. And around the age 5 or so for each of my kids, it just sort of clicked. And we didn't really have to do a lot of spanking and things started heading in a great direction. Um, so hang in there, keep going, and just always be asking the questions about, what's my motive here. Amy says, that might be helpful. Thanks, Amy. My mind always goes in the future. I think a lot of my issues begin when I start to panic, thinking he'll never listen or obey. Yeah, you got to stay right in the moment. Yeah, you can't deal with tomorrow. You can't deal with years down the road. You can deal with today. So that's it's good self-awareness there. Yeah, stick to it. Stick to it. Yeah, sending him to his room, as Amy suggests, is good. I think I walked through what we did with the bathroom, and there's a similar thing. It gives the child a moment to reflect and anticipate what's coming, and gives you a moment to gather yourself. So, yeah, I think that can be good. Any other questions, comments, insights? Still kind of chuckling at Dean Floyd's comments. I think Caleb's questions are a good reminder for all of us who are in the midst of it. Most parenting is not that difficult to understand. There's a lot of books that make it very complex, and you get counselors and psychologists and psychiatrists and stuff that's been handed down from Freud through Christian counseling, and even sometimes into biblical counseling. And we, like in every discipline of life, it seems like we can so easily leave the simple, concrete biblical wisdom and think we can figure out motives and intents and dissect things and really make them complex. Parenting is not that complex, I don't think. Scripturally, I don't think. It's pretty simple, not easy, but simple. And I think we should always guard against making it too complex. Discipline them for disobedience. Love them. Lead them where you want them to go. And take the long-term view. As I've said before, your goal is to raise a godly adult, not a godly 3-year-old. Do you see the distinction there? You've got a lot of time. Now, what you do today does matter, but you can only do today. You can't do tomorrow, right? You can't do years from now. But you've got a long time, and don't allow yourself to feel that urgency. Just take care of today. Just take care of today. Says, I have 4, 13, 12, 10, and almost 8. That's a pretty good spread there. Sana says, disciplining is hard, but it is so worth it in the long run. Some kids learn quicker than others, but they all figure it out if we're consistent. Absolutely. Yeah, my middle child, my second daughter, didn't take her long at all. She did not like spanking, so pretty soon a raised eyebrow was the end of it for her. Amy says, it was thick slogging for a while, especially since our first was a pleaser. Thick slogging, that's a good way to put it. Although, yeah, and I don't want to demean that at all or undermine that. Yeah, I guess there's just no way to, yeah, that's a great picture of it, so I'm going to leave it there. Caleb says, we've been using your model of parenting. Isn't complicated, it's hard. All we need to do is get them to obey, which is the hardest part. Yep. And just realize, don't take it so seriously. Kids disobey constantly. And God gave them to you to teach them not to do that. Right? So it's not the end of the world. And each event is not like it means they are on their way to great rebellion forever. Again, I think Reformed theology can lay this so thick. Your child has all the potential in the world to be Hitler, and that's not how the Bible portrays it. Just today, require obedience and teach them, discipline them, love them, and tomorrow you'll get to do it again. How did you come to your conclusion that the institutional church model could not deliver that extended family fellowship of a home meeting? Well, if you haven't watched the whole series, I did a whole series on this. Not that direct question. Bottom line is the institutional church model is a spectator sport. It's not family and individuals in community loving one another. Right? That's yeah. Daniel says, April and I try our best to be on the same page when disciplining, which has been helpful. Yeah, that's always good. Sending mixed signals to the kids is not a good thing. Amy says, spend lots of time outside. It helps everyone decompress, go for exploration walks together. Yeah, exactly. Spend lots of time together, and it doesn't have to be carefully planned every minute. Go outside, do something. Yep, very good. Sana says her second was also the hardest. Interesting. I think it's hard too that others' kids always seem so much more obedient because out of the house they act better. Yeah, you can't get in the comparison game. That doesn't lead anywhere good either. You can't compare your kid to a kid in that sense. They're just different, and treat them differently. Consistent, but yeah. All right, very good. If there are specific things that would be helpful for me to address in future Family First Fridays, leave them in the comments on this video. There are so many areas to cover, right? So many things worth talking about. But if there's something in particular that's helpful that I haven't addressed, leave in the comments and I'll give those a look. So great to hear your thoughts. A lot of wisdom here. Y'all are doing well, and you should make sure that you, especially those of you who are a little further down the road than say Caleb is, make sure that you make space to help younger families in their younger years. Like I think of what I'm hearing from Sana and Amy. If you were near someone like Caleb in your church, in your gatherings, invite them in your homes and open the dialogue for them to ask you these kind of things. I have found there are a lot of young single folks and couples and young parents that would love to gain wisdom from those who are doing it well and are further down the road. And there seems to be a disconnect both ways. Younger folks are hesitant to just flat out ask for help, and older folks, and I know, Amy, you're not terribly old, and Son, I don't know how old you are, but I don't think you're as old as I am, by a long shot. I don't know why I think that, but those who are a little further down the road, there's a hesitance to think we have something to offer. I've seen that again and again, and the broader church suffers the consequences of the younger folks not asking for it and the older folks not freely inviting that conversation. So let me just encourage all of you, wherever you are in that continuum, ask for wisdom and freely give wisdom. All right, we'll leave it there. Have a great day and a great weekend, and we will get back on Monday to Revelation. Grace and peace to you all.